Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another session of How to Write a Tax-Efficient Will with me, Deborah Bowers. The world is becoming so uncertain at this time, and it's becoming ever more important to consider writing your wills and getting your affairs in order. It doesn't matter where you are. We've just seen the massive earthquakes in Turkey, and tonight there were reports of an earthquake in Romania. And thank goodness it's not as bad as the one in Turkey. No one was reported injured, but it just shows you the level of uncertainty that's in the world right now. I'd like to welcome Louis as he joins us this evening. We've just started, Louis, and I'm simply welcoming everyone at this time. So welcome to the session as well. It's good to have you again this evening. Now, tonight we'll be discussing the difference between going for a life interest and a discretionary interest when you're writing a will, because sometimes people are a bit worried about what should they choose, what should they do. So tonight we'll be discussing life interest trust versus discretionary trust. And the reason why this is important, because whenever you're writing the will has structure. It has roles and responsibilities, and it is important that you understand what each role or responsibility deals with. And so tonight we'll be taking a closer look at life interest versus discretionary trust. Let me introduce myself. My name is Deborah Bowers. I'm a STEP certified advanced will writer. I'm also a solicitor of England and Wales. I am certified on the GDPR. I'm a GDPR practitioner, certified on CIPPE and CIPM. And in my ordinary everyday life, I practice GDPR law. So I help people deal with any issues they have concerning data protection. I'm also the author of How to Write a Tax-Efficient Will, this lovely book here, which is available on Amazon. So if you would like to know how you can write your own will, please purchase the book. I have lots of examples in there, which will help you write your will from beginning to end. And it explains all the different aspects and areas of a will. It also explains your inheritance tax position, because lots of people want to write their will, but they don't understand inheritance tax. They don't understand that you've got to pay a tax on the property you leave behind if the property is above a certain value. And so I explained that in this book. So if your property is beyond £325,000, you must make provision for that 40% inheritance tax rate. There are exemptions which you can use to reduce your liability, and that may apply to you. So the book opens your eyes to what you may not have considered in the past. And don't forget that we never know where we might inherit property from, because sometimes someone has left us property, or property comes to us by default under the laws of intestacy. And so it's wonderful to set up, to appoint trustees in your will, so that those trustees can then deal with any other property you get later on. So there are lots of things we can do to protect our families, to protect our future generations. And it is time that we take the bull by the horns and do what is right to protect our families. So tonight we'll have this discussion about life interest and discretionary trust, because there are two things that can be considered and you can put into a will. Also, I want to give a disclaimer at this point. This discussion will not mean that there's going to be a lawyer-client relationship between us. It is not legal advice. It is not financial advice. Neither is it investment advice. But I would always say to you, you can trust what is being said, because I'm relying on my knowledge and expertise, but you need to verify. Now, what should you choose? Should you choose a life interest trust, or what is your best choice that you make between life interest and discretionary trust? This is what we are going to dive into right now. And what you decide to choose all depends on your circumstances and what you are trying to achieve. For example, are you trying to protect your partner? So you may have a husband and wife, and they're trying to protect each other against being thrown out of the property. Then after, and so that the partner is able to stay in the property, and afterwards the children get the property. Are you trying to protect your children? Are you in a relationship where there were children from a previous relationship and now they are children from two different relationships, but you're trying to protect the house that the children are used to that belongs to the former relationship? Are you trying to protect it for those children? Are you trying to protect the property for all the children so that they can use it as an asset going forward in the future? Are you trying to protect assets for future generations? What is it that you are trying to achieve? Are you trying to protect a group of persons? Or are you trying to protect a vulnerable person, someone who needs looking after, they can't make decisions for themselves? How are you going to protect them? Now, we shall go through each of these areas and we shall discuss what you need to do or which is the best option for you based on what you're trying to achieve. Tonight, we have we are fortunate enough to have Anne-Marie on the call. I know that she's a barrister of England and Wales. She's also an attorney at law in St. Lucia, and she's welcome to chip in and to make a contribution to this discussion. I do like to give people as much information as I can, because these sessions are just so enlightening and so many people have found them very useful and very informative. So if you're trying to protect your partner, there are really two ways of doing that. You can use the life interest. You can also use the discretionary trust. But think of this scenario that I'm going to be giving you right now. You have your partner, and the children. But what you want is for your partner not to be moved out of the home. You want your partner to have the right to stay in the property and to have the enjoyment of the house. So you have the house, it's your house. You want your partner to be able to continue to enjoy it until he or she passes. And you don't want the children to be able to kick the partner out. The best thing to do is to provide a life interest for your partner. So that would mean that your partner can stay within that property for as long as he or she desires. It would be up to them to give up that life interest. So the life interest trust will allow them for as long as they are living to remain in that property. The life interest trust could also have clauses such as if the person remarries, because some people, if their spouse remarries, they don't want them to remain in that property. They want them to give up the life interest. The life interest can also say that if you decide to move out of the property, then your life interest will come to an end. So there can be many clauses that you can put around that. But what it will do, it will ensure that your partner can stay in the property. You can also put clauses such as the property needs to be maintained, or if it could be even sold, but the other beneficiaries must be consulted. Once you don't get rid of the property, you can sell the property, but you must buy another one. Because sometimes what happens is an area gets really run down. And you don't want your partner to be living in a place, your partner lives 40 years more than you, and the person has to stay in a place, in a house, in an area that is no longer user-friendly. So you would like for the person to be a bit flexible. You want to give them powers to repair. You want to give them powers to move and to buy another property, but you ensure that a property will actually be there for those who come after. So it's important to understand all the things you can do with a life interest trust. If you wish, you can also make the trust a discretionary trust and put your partner into that discretionary trust. But then there will be a few more challenges that you will have to consider. It will not protect your partner as well. I say so because a discretionary trust is a discretion. And the trustees will have to decide who they're going to exercise a discretion to benefit. So I don't normally recommend discretionary trust for if you want to protect your partner from being moved out of a home that your partner has shared with you and you'd like your partner to continue using until the time that they have passed. I would say do a life interest trust, and a discretionary trust can be used in another way. And one way, for example, that you can use a discretionary trust is like you want to really give, you've come from two different relationships. You have decided, okay, you had a child and you're going to give your child everything that belongs to you, but you're going to set up a discretionary trust as well for your child, your grandchildren, and your partner, because you want those properties to remain with your family. So you have not thrown your partner out because your partner has their own means. What you have done is said that if anything, if necessary, if your partner falls into hardship, then your partner can benefit from the discretionary trust if the trustees exercise their powers to assist the partner. But it is less protection for the partner, but it still leaves an open door for your partner to benefit from your assets if the trustees decide to exercise their discretion to benefit your partner. So it's a good way of looking at things as well. But as I said, it's all based on your circumstances and what you are trying to achieve. So let's take a look at protect your children. Protecting your children I would recommend, for example, a discretionary trust for the kids if you are not dividing the property amongst them equally and you don't want them to just sell the assets and share the money. But they can still do that if they are also the trustees and they agree the trustees to them dissolve the trust. So they can come together, make a decision, sell the assets, and distribute the funds amongst themselves. But when I say you can protect your children that way, is that you can allow your partner to have the life interest and still have the children benefit after the partner has enjoyed the property. So you can either distribute the property to them 100%, or you can put the property into a trust afterwards for the benefit of your children. Of course, when the property is in a discretionary trust, it is at the discretion of the trustees how the property is, or whatever income from the property is distributed amongst the children. So you find that families who have great fortunes usually have the property in a discretionary trust because it protects the children against persons who are gold diggers, people who have just come to try to, I know you are from a wealthy family, I'm going to try to get into your life so I could benefit. Or a child who has gone off on drugs as well, because the trustees will not exercise the discretion to give them anything. Also, the trustees will not pay off their debts if they get into lots of debt and people are hunting them down to try to get their money. So drugs, debts, poor relationships, that sort of thing, you can protect your children by putting your property within a discretionary trust. You can also protect your assets for future generations if you put your property within a trust, because you can say to the trustees, I want you to accumulate the assets or the income from the assets for a certain amount of years. And during the course of that time, you're literally increasing the volume of income or assets within the trust for the benefit of the future generation, so your grandchildren, because sometimes the children have done well, they don't need the money. but you are putting something in place for the next generation, their children, your grandchildren, and your great-grandchildren. I met a gentleman who told me his grandson is 5 years old and he already has a pension. You know, I mean, that's someone who's thought long and hard about what they need to do for their future generations. And his grandson and his grandchildren all have pensions in place, and they're only 5. You know, so by the time that that person gets to arrive, the person probably won't need to work by the time they are 18. But they can do whatever they need to do, but they can survive without needing to have a 9-to-5 job, or they can still have a 9-to-5 job and continue to benefit the family. Doesn't mean you just got to use up what your family has left you. You can improve on it and leave for the next generation to come. You can also protect a group of persons, which is similar to what I have just said. You can protect your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren. You can protect, for example, you can have a trust, a discretionary trust for a specific group of persons that are identifiable. For example, it could be to assist with orphans. That's a group of people. If the trustees want to benefit an orphan or an orphanage or certain activities that you want, you can have a discretionary trust set up to do that. Another thing that people don't usually think about is sometimes not everyone in the family is well. Some people are more vulnerable than others. And you may have a discretionary trust where the trustees are advised to provide for the main beneficiary being a number of beneficiaries, but they should give priority to the vulnerable person, the person who's probably learning impaired, that sort of thing, who can't make decisions for themselves, the person who is not mobile or has an impairment, or is in a childlike state, or needs medical assistance or care. You can have a trust in place that helps that person, and that person is the priority. You can give your trustees instructions to make that person the priority, but you have a list of other people under that they can also exercise a discretion to assist them as well. So as I said, you can see it's all based on your circumstances. It's all based on what you're trying to achieve, and everyone's circumstances is different. Your circumstances are different from person to person. Are there any questions from what I've been saying? Any issues that you would like to raise, or any observations that you've made?
I just want to add about the tax position when you set up these trusts.
Yes.
Okay, we have inheritance tax. Well, you do. And the inheritance tax position is very favorable with discretionary trust, is it not?
It is more favorable than the 40% inheritance tax. They are taxed every 10 years. It's a 20% tax. And you only pay, you pay for assets going into the trust and assets coming out of the trust. And that's about a 4-point-something%, maybe 4.25 if I remember correctly. But it's a more favorable treatment than when you're paying 40% inheritance tax on your assets. Yes, it is a more favorable position.
It's still subject to the 7-year rule, isn't it?
The 7-year rule is for gifts. If you have given a gift and you have survived 7 years, and that's 0%, it becomes an exempt gift. So it's separate, it's a different thing from a gift. Yes.
Yeah.
But those are very good questions. Thank you for that, Anne-Marie. I really appreciate that, because sometimes you see all these are things that people get a little confused about. And it's a challenge to know it all. And I still don't know it all, but I keep focusing and reading through and learning more every day. And I just want to share that knowledge with people, because it's just so important, because you can save yourself so much by knowing that. Yes.
One of the most interesting is how you go about, you have houses, you have cars, you have whatever it is, assets. How do you now put them into a trust?
Okay, there are two ways of doing that. You can do the trust whilst you are living. That's a different type of trust that you put your assets into that trust. But in relation to a will, you put, if you want to create the trust in the will, you set up the trust within the will. You simply mention that the assets should go into trust. So your executors and trustees know that the assets are going into a discretionary trust, and you say who, if it's going to be, who is going to be the, well, your executors and trustees, you can appoint trustees right there within the will. So that's very interesting, because someone was just having a chat with me about it, and they said, oh, that's a lot, that's a bit complicated. I'm like, no, it's not quite, because think of it this way. To deal with your will itself, you can only appoint 4 trustees, 4 executors and trustees. So those people will deal with your, seeing that your will is properly probated and all your assets are gathered and things like that. But within your will, you can put a clause that there will also be the trustees of any trust arising under your will. You see? So you when you put a clause like that within your will, then they are the trustees that you would that have been nominated or appointed within the body of the will itself. And so the rules pertaining to executors and trustees will apply to them, as well as you can give them the rules that apply to the trust. So as far as the trust within the will is concerned, they will have certain powers which you can also give to them. So you have your executors and trustees at the top to manage the will itself. And then you can set up a discretionary trust within the will and give the trustees instructions how to manage that discretionary trust. Of course, it is within their discretion. So you give them like a letter of wishes, but it is a discretion who they give the property to. But you can give them some guidelines by writing out a letter of wishes for them. Does that answer your question?
Yes, very succinctly, thank you.
Yeah, so there's in this case, there is no, and the property only goes into the trust after you have passed. It goes, they will put it in the trust after. In the other one, where you have set up a living trust, you do that during your lifetime and you put your assets into that. So it's 2 different types of trust. One where you are alive and you call it a living trust. You put your assets into it whilst you are alive. And one you create under your will, where the assets go in after. It is the role of your executors and trustees to then set it up after your passing.
Yeah.
Now, the main difference with those, I'll tell you, is that the living one, you've got to put the asset in, right? So the asset must belong to you. It cannot be, unless you have the permission of a bank that you have a big loan on, or you need the permission of whoever else owns that asset. It must be an asset that is yours, that you can put into, you can take it and put into that property. With the one under your will, even though there is a loan on it, your trustees, your executors and trustees can deal with that loan. And once that is resolved, you can put it into the property. So, or they can manage it. You understand? So you must understand the difference between the living one, the living trust, and the trust that arises under the will. Okay? Any other questions? Very, very intriguing there. You know, I mean, I'm sure everyone is mind-boggled at the moment, but they are it's a very thin line between the two. Okay, so lovely questions there. So this is the end of the presentation tonight. Of course, if you wish to contact me, you may do so on Deborah Bowers Will Writing. I'm also on YouTube at Deborah Bowers or Deborah Bowers channel. You can find me there. Like and subscribe to the videos, please help me get that channel moving and get the ratings up. You can also email me on deborahbowerswillwriting@gmail.com. And of course, you can join the course that I have. It's a lifelong access. It's deborahbowers.mastermind.com at masterminds 36966. Or you can telephone me 079-818-10322. So it's in your hands. You can speak with me, email me, or go on the YouTube channel, watch the videos, like and subscribe, and refer your friends and relatives. They really need this information. These are really uncertain times, and we all can do with the help. Any other questions? Okay, there are no other questions. I will stop the recording for now. I will stay on for a little bit and we can chat if anyone wishes to speak with me.